and gentlemen, and welcome to the program. This is your daily piece of financial markets, and I am Anthony SSEBALE, and I am your host. It is a Tuesday, and the 8th day of November. Of course, looking forward to the end of the year as well as we close into the fourth quarter of the year, breaking down some of the top stories in the financial markets world, globally and regionally as well here in East Africa, and getting you up to speed of what's happening on the markets at the moment. Remember, the show is proudly brought to you by Altex East Africa, your #1 private stock exchange. Remember, they get you treasury bonds now at the best interest rates in the land. You can now buy or even sell bonds on the secondary market as of course, currently in Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, with the best interest, of course, coming in from Altex East Africa. Bonds are long-term transferable loans or debts to governments. And so if you want to be part of that market and action, get to check out Altex. They are also now partnering with MTN Momo to bring you Zabu, an initiative where you can be able to buy or even sell different financial instruments using your phone by dialing USSD code *292# and following the prompts. Altex East Africa doing something new. Now let's slide right into the markets here. And on the US markets, there were some stocks, of course, that had mixed reactions from the investors, as Monday, of course, geared up for another week of potentially market-moving events. And we, of course, talking about two big events this week. On the 8th of November, today, is going to be the mid-term elections. And, of course, they are underway there in the United States. And, of course, that is a big, big story and something that would move the market like crazy, definitely, as we now can see it. Also, we are looking at the October Consumer Price Index as well, coming in as another big influencer of the markets in the United States. However, yesterday, at the end of the trading day at the United States Stock Exchange, we had the S&P 500, which tracks the aggregate performance of the top 500 companies in the United States, advanced by about 0.1%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the top 30 companies on the US stock market gained about 160 points, or roughly about 0.5%. The technology-heavy NASDAQ opened with a loss of about 0.2% of the index, posted its worst weekly decline since January. And of course, this was due to several factors in the technology industry there in the United States. A batch of downbeat corporate news has renewed the focus on the wreck across the technology stocks after disappointing earnings last week dragged the sector's heaviest hitters, that is Apple, Amazon, and Alphabet Google, to losses of more than about 10% each of them. Remember last week we were looking at companies declaring, of course, their third quarter earnings, and the tech stocks, particularly Google, Amazon, and as well as Facebook, registered some of the worst declines for this time round in the third quarter. And this is not coming at a cheap cost, as we're seeing right now markets unfold this week. Also, Apple shares slumped more than 1% after the company said that in a statement on Sunday, it expects fewer shipments of its renewed premium iPhones than previously anticipated, citing COVID-19 lockdowns in China that dented operations at its biggest smartphone maker, that is Foxconn factory there. Also among the tech giants, Facebook parent, that is Meta, which was down by 73% that of Friday, is the worst performer on the S&P 500. Now this is very, very important. Facebook is coming in as the worst performer on the S&P 500 index, and we're seeing that it is now expected to begin a large-scale layoff starting this week. which is not good news coming in from Facebook. According to the Wall Street Journal on Sunday, shares rose nearly about 6% on Facebook last week. Elsewhere in the markets, the Carvana shares is another company that also had about 15% decline. It sank by 15% in terms of a 5-year low after an analyst at Morgan Stanley last week said that the car retailer could be worth as little as $1. So today, we're going to the polls for the midterm elections. Yes, in America, we do have midterm elections. And around this time, of course, candidates of different parties, especially from the big two, that's the Republican and the Democrats, we come together and see how, of course, the term has been able to be performed, or how the current president has performed. And of course, people are able to elect on the midterm on which party is actually, most likely to become the next presidential party for the next elections. And of course, this is a big mover for the markets, and we're looking forward to the end of today and getting to see what this will have as an impact on the U.S. stock market. Let's get back to Africa and see what happens in what happened on the African stock exchanges around the continent. Starting off with Ghana. Ghana didn't have any movement at a 0.0% movement in terms of the stock exchange and the all-share index on Ghana here. We also see the Johannesburg Stock Exchange had about 0.44% gain on the major index, which is the J203, and this tracks the aggregate performance of all the listed stocks on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Well, the index moved up by about 308.37 points on the first day of trading here. Nairobi Stock Exchange, on the other hand, declined slightly by about 0.02 and 0.02%, and still not performing that well for the first day of trading. The Nigerian Stock Exchange appreciated the first day of the week by about 0.25 points, and this was a 0.001% probably movement that we witnessed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Zimbabwe, on the other hand, had a decline of about 64.14 points. Well, Zimbabwe has been kind of resilient, especially over last week, and also looking into a couple of about 3 or 4 weeks back. Zimbabwe has been one of those stocks that, regardless of the tough times that most of other stock exchanges have had to endure, especially closing October and coming into the month of November, Zimbabwe has been doing good. But now the opposite is true, as the stock lost about 64.14 points on its all-share index, and this was a 0.42% loss there. Now let's look at Uganda back home and see how our stocks here performed at the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now, the Uganda Stock Exchange has close to about 18 companies that are listed on the Uganda Stock Exchange, and 8 of these are cross listings, whereas 10 of these are domestically listed on the stock exchange. We do have indexes, and one of the indexes is the all-share index, which tracks the aggregate performance of all the listed companies on the stock exchange. On the other hand, we do have the local company index for tracking the aggregate performance of the domestic stocks on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now, on the first day of trading, we realized a decline kind of on the all-share index, which was a 7.42 that was registered, 7.42 points down, and this was a 0.6% decline on the day's trades. And looking at the participants, we had about 5 companies out of 18 participate in trading. And you know, when it comes to market activity, you must understand that it's really important that we have big numbers, because the more participants we have, even with smaller volumes, the more likely the market is going to perform much better. And so we just had 5 companies participating, which on average was good, comparing with data from the past, where we have had about 3 companies, 4 companies participating in the trades. And amongst these, we had only one top gainer. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it was a cross-listing, and this was Nation Media Group, who gained about 0.83% on their stock and closed at about 500 shillings of their stock price there. On the losing side, we had Jubilee Holdings, who lost about 2.46%, which was the worst performance for the day, and closed the market at 6,699.4 Ugandan shillings per share. When you look at also Centum, he declined by 1.54%. We also had East African Breweries, who lost about 1.02%, and Equity Bank, who lost about 0.85%. On the losing side, we didn't have any domestic company big on the losing side, or neither did we have one on the gaining side. But amongst the top movers, as usual, we had domestic companies, of course, coming there. And Stanbic Bank came in as a top mover, though with a smaller margin of about 88,900 shares. Now, Stanbic is currently the most traded on stock on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And if you haven't bought yourself stock in Stanbic, I don't know what you're waiting for, because this could be the best time of the year to buy stock in Stanbic. And if you're a trader out there, you should be advising some of your clients to buy themselves some stock in Stanbic Bank, as the company is affordable quite at the moment, and also trying to maintain a good activity overall during this time. Stanbic Bank was followed by Umeme, who had about 30,678 shares that were traded on the market, and then later on MTN Uganda, who had about 30,350 shares, and Uganda Clays at 18,100 shares. Regarding the performance of the O-Share Index, the index moved down by 7.42 points, like we have already seen, and this was a 0.6% decline in points to close at exactly 1,232.49 points, representing a 1-week loss of 1.99% and a 4-week gain. We are still on a 4-week gain of about 1.02%. But on overall, we have had a year-to-date loss of 13.25% on the O-Share Index. The local company index, however, on the other hand, as well declined about 0.03% to close at 268.8 points, making it a 1-week loss of 1% and a 4-week loss of 1.29%. Now, the outlook of the Uganda Stock Exchange is quite blurry. We don't know what really is going to happen in the fourth quarter of the year. And I promised I would be sharing the quarterly bulletin from the Capital Markets Authority, and I will do so in due time. But the stock exchange right now is still under what we could call a period of trying to reset. Every time we're having a close of a quarter, starting another quarter, we're trying to kind of get a reset, and we're trying to kind of refresh the stock exchange. And this is really the time to just do that. And it's not a time to really worry and sell in a panic mode. Not really. It's not that time of the year, but rather we must be very vigilant and trust those opportunities that the stock market is providing at the moment. Regarding the other companies, remember we have 18 companies, and most of these are definitely listed on the Uganda Stock Exchange. You can visit the website and find out more about them. But for example, British American Tobacco Uganda at 15,000 Ugandan shillings currently is the stock price, and Bank of Baroda at 85.0 Ugandan shillings, and also Centum Investments at 272.34 Ugandan shillings, and Cipla Quality Chemical Industries retained their price of 65.04 Ugandan shillings. DFCU Bank also retained their price of 544.0 Ugandan shillings. In summary, the trade showed a 25% improvement in the volumes, much as there was a contraction, little contraction in the turnover of about 28%, whereas, of course, the market capitalization was kept well above 21.3 trillion Ugandan shillings. That's it, ladies and gentlemen, from the Uganda Stock Exchange. I will have to cross over to Nairobi very briefly and get to look at what's happening on the Nairobi Stock Exchange as per the trades on Monday. Now, we had 49 companies participate in trading on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and the day ended with 17 gainers and close to 23 losers. Well, guess who the top gainer was? Olympia Capital Holdings came in at the top of the table, leading at 9.76% gain there in price to close at 2.70 Ugandan shillings per share. It was followed by ABSA New Gold ETF. Yes, the exchange traded fund at ABSA there gained about 7.18%. And then several other gainers here were recorded, such as Home Africa, Sasini Tea and Coffee, and a couple of others. Well, on the losing side, EGADS performed worst on the day of trading here at 8.75% loss on the stock price there, and closed the day with a price of 10.95 Kenyan shillings. Centum Investments Company also lost at 8.24%, and Standard Group at 6.52%. Well, regarding the index slightly declined about 0.02% and closed at 127.63 points. But overall, we had other indexes like the NSE20 and the NSE25 as well declined significantly. For example, the NSE20, which tracks the top 20 companies on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, declined about 0.76%, and the NSE25 for the top 25 companies declined about 0.39 points. Remember, you can trade stock on, for example, Nairobi Stock Exchange. You don't have to go to Nairobi whatsoever. You have to diversify. Try to find a way of reaching out to more than one stock exchange, or reaching out to more than one company on a given stock exchange, so that you can diversify. And make sure you're also investing sector-wise, because as certain sectors are doing well at a particular point in time, other sectors could be doing better or worse. And so look out for the sector which you think is going to do better in the near future and get yourself to invest. Now, let's look at the summary here for Nairobi. We had about 6.5 million shares on Nairobi Stock Exchange being traded, and these were recorded in about 1,008 deals, corresponding to a market value of close to 169 million Kenyan shillings. Compared with the previous day of trading, there was a 43% decline in volume, however, and a 17% improvement in the turnover was registered. Well, the market capitalization in Nairobi still remains above 1.9 trillion, to be specific, 1.98 trillion Kenyan shillings there on the Nairobi market. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have much time left for the year to end, but this is a time to be very strategic. Fund managers are getting into the market and buying huge volumes, preparing for the new year. What are you doing about your trades? What are you doing about your shares as we close into the fourth quarter of the year? It's that time of the year we don't want to end with any baggages, behind. We want to carry forward what we think is going to be very, very profitable for the future. And always remember to invest for the long term, because the more short-term basis your investments, the much riskier they actually get. That's it from us. Remember, the show is proudly brought to you by Altex East Africa, your #1 private stock exchange. You can check out Altex on www.altex.eastafrica.com, and you can also get to your smartphone or your small phone and dial *292# and get to learn more about the products there at Altex East Africa. My name is Anthony. I'll catch you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye for now.